Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Welcome on. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, host, and Scott Geirman is joining us today, one of our writers over at DodgerBlue.com. We had to give Scott some time to process, to grieve, to mourn, because today I want to ask you a very simple question, Scott. Did the Dodgers make a mistake in not signing Carlos Correa? He signs a 13-year, $350 million contract with the hated Giants up north. I've given you some time. Was this a mistake by the Dodgers?
No.
Okay, that's a surprise. That's a surprise. Here we go.
Yes, I have a lot. There's a ton to break down about that. First thing, it's unfortunate the Dodgers, as of now, they've missed out on the top free agent shortstops. But there's so much more to break down about that, and we've got a little bit of time. I don't want to dive in, bit by bit at the moment. But for the contract that the Giants handed Carlos Correa, I think when we got that notification, everyone's like, wow.
Yeah.
13 years. I mean, yeah, on that deal, they didn't miss out on that. That's a huge contract, and I don't think at the moment the Dodgers are prepared to hand out Carlos Correa 13 years, $350 million.
Yeah. He's going to be a free agent in 2036. Yeah. That popped up on his Fangraphs. Like, I have a second grader. She's going to be almost graduated from college by the time Carlos Correa stops getting paid $27 million a year for the Giants. Obviously, the 27 AAV is a really reasonable number, but it's because they basically said, we're going to give you 27 AAV, but we're going to give you 3 extra years of it on the end of this, 4 extra years at the end of this, and you're just going to make tons of money, and you're not going to be productive at that point. Now, let's break down Correa really quick, because I think let's set aside the whole Astros thing, because if there's one thing to be clear, nobody that associated him with the Astros was making the case, at least not on this show, that he's not good. Like, it's not like, oh, well, he was cheating and that's why he was good. The guy's a very good baseball player. It was just, do I want to root for him? That was the anti-Correa argument. It's also tough to talk about free agents until you know what the contract is. Like, I can want Carlos Correa. I know you wanted Carlos Correa, but at some point you see the contract and you say 13 years at $350 million. I didn't want Carlos Correa that badly. And so I think the argument against Carlos Correa, in my estimation, actually boils down to just one thing, and that's health history. It's not a question of, is this guy any good? It's, do you want to pay a long-term contract to a guy with his history? Now, to be fair, 2020 shortened season, he missed just 2 games. 2021, he played 148 games. 2022, 136. Those are all solid numbers. The problem is when you go back a little further. He missed more than half of the season in 2019. He missed 52 games in 2018, and he missed 53 games in 2017. And that's the type of thing for a guy that, yes, he's just 28 years old, but I think that would be the concern. Scott, for you, we can get into the pros here in a minute of Correa, but for you, was the health history the biggest concern, or was there something else with Correa?
Probably the biggest concern with Carlos Correa is, probably stay on the field. And I would say consistency. I don't know, his bat's been there, but I mean, I'm not going to correlate Mookie Betts and Carlos Correa, but if you just pull up the contracts just for what they are, Mookie Betts, that's the largest contract the Dodgers have given out. It's the largest contract we've seen the Dodgers hand out, 12 years, $365 million. So it'd be, like a Mookie Betts contract being handed out, and how, ecstatic everyone was with that. But the difference is he's, I always say, this is my saying amongst all my family, Mookie Betts will be a Dodger till I'm 40 years old. So it's a different type of thing. And when you break down Carlos Correa, health and longevity is probably the biggest thing, and having to eventually shift that player to a different corner position, having that be an inevitability. It's something that I don't know if the Dodgers were prepared to do. So I think for Carlos Correa, man, it's just going to stick out to us. They've committed, free agency, there's been almost $1 billion committed to shortstops in 4 of them. So it's 911 around. Yeah, we'll just say roughly, $950 million. Just in this offseason. And I don't know if the Dodgers are ready to give out Carlos Correa $365 million of that. The Giants were in a position where the Dodgers were fighting an uphill battle this whole time, not because they weren't willing to spend. It's because there are other teams willing to spend more, considering where they are with their team and their spending and their cap.
Yeah, and I think if I would push back slightly, I think the Dodgers do have an unwillingness to spend right now, but it can be both and. You can say, hey, the Dodgers have a limited budget that they have decided they are going to work with, and we're not here to advocate for or against that sort of approach for the Dodgers. But you can both say, hey, the Dodgers are being more prudent with their money and other teams are spending a little bit like crazy. There's a bunch of crazy people at the party. And so now the question is, now that the Giants have spent their money, they signed Haniger, they signed Jock Peterson, they signed Correa. Now that the Padres have spent their money, now that the Mets, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Mets are going to keep spending money. But we'll see if things get reasonable. The Mookie comparison real quick I think is interesting just to compare the caliber of players. If you look at wins above replacement, I'm not saying it's a perfect statistic, but if you look at wins above replacement, if you use like 4.5 as a barometer, Carlos Correa has had just 2 seasons of being a 4.5 WAR player or higher. That was 2021 and that was 2017. Mookie Betts, on the other hand, if you use 4.5 wins above replacement, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2022, all over. So if you're looking at those 2 guys who are making about the same amount of money, I should say Mookie's making a little bit more, but are getting paid for the similar amount of money for the similar length of time. Take your pick on who you would rather have. Now, the argument for Correa, real quick, is that he is very good. Like, I'm not here to crap on Carlos Correa. He was probably the most consistent hitter of the group. I mean, Xander Bogaerts maybe a little bit, but he was the guy that combined you high-end defense and high-end offense at a consistent level. One of the only guys in that group that you probably project to stick at shortstop long-term. And so that's the argument for, which leads me to, okay, did the Dodgers make a mistake in signing Carlos Correa? You and I say, hey, looking at the contract, we're not interested. But obviously the follow-up question is, so what do they do now? Like, would you go hand Dansby Swanson a 5-year, $150 million contract if that's what it took to get Dansby Swanson? That's a lot higher AAV than we were expecting, but that maybe prevents you from having him on your books. Or are you most comfortable with, is the least bad option at this point Gavin Lux at shortstop? Or obviously the mysterious trade that we would all like to fantasize about, but as of today, there's no real legs to.
Yeah, so Andrew Friedman has operated with allowing the market to play for him. You've rarely seen him, unless there's an opportunity out there, like Mookie Betts. You go out and you get him. It doesn't matter. It's just, if he's available, that's what's going to happen, because it's that type of guy is only available to, I would say, teams that can, withstand that prospect blow. And looking back at it now, it wasn't a blow at all. That was a puff. But Freddie Freeman, you look at that, that's the perfect example. He fell into their lap. He became available at like the 11th hour. And not many teams were available to just say, like Freddie Freeman. Looking back at that now, that contract is incredible. What a steal, right? So I don't think Friedman's going to be reactionary here. That's the last thing he's going to do. They're not going to do that. If they sign Dansby Swanson, it's because Friedman believes it's the best opportunity. Like, there's going to be a contract that is going to be beneficial to both player and the Dodgers. I don't believe that he's going to sign Dansby Swanson. I think they'll find a different avenue. And if he ends up getting that deal done, it will be because, the market fell to them, and it's going to be something that he sees as, like a really great option for the Dodgers if he can fit it in. Right. Yeah. So, but I want to say one thing to contracts real fast and how many years in AAV they're getting. The luxury tax threshold is going to go up inevitably. And I think teams are looking to try to like, if you look at the shortstop market for the next few years, this was it. Yeah. So to get these guys under contract, you have to add on those extra years. That's just where the market's going. So if that's where it is, and I think we need to become, the norm is going to be these super mega long contracts, and that's just what it is. But this is just a time where they're looking ahead to where the spending cap is going to be going, and that's just what it took to get them.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting to that point. I agree with everything you say about Friedman, by the way. I think he's an optionality guy, that he's got options. Like, he played out all the scenarios. This was one of the scenarios, and so they're going to react and adjust accordingly. And I don't mean react as in like they're playing from behind. It's just sort of like, okay, we're going to say no to that contract, no to that contract, no to that contract. All right, so what was plan B or C or D or wherever we're at? But I am curious to see if the contract thing, where that plays. Because I agree that the threshold is going to go up. And so a $27 million deal in 2035, when Carlos Correa is in his last year, is not going to be that atrocious, even if he's a guy that's not playing. It's going to be like the David Price contract was last year, where the Dodgers are paying him way more money than he's actually worth, but you just deal with it and adjust. The one thing I'm curious about is there was a stretch in the NBA when they started handing out these massive long-term contracts, and then a few years later, everybody reacted against it because it was like, holy crap, like, we have these guys that we signed to, like, you know, at the time it was like 7 or 8 year deals. The NBA actually changed their rules, and they're not allowed to offer. They prevented themselves from offering more than like a 5 or a 6 year deal. And so, is there going to be a market correction? I'll be very curious to see that because, again, a 13-year deal for a 28-year-old is a crazy, crazy thing.
No trade clause.
With a no trade clause as well. And, you know, we didn't even get into, it's perfect that he's on the Giants. And let me end with this real quick, because this is one thing I know people are going to say, like, oh, the Dodgers suck, they're going to finish last. Let's just remember, like, the Giants signed Carlos Correa, yes. Okay, go look at the Giants depth chart. Go look at the Giants roster. It's not sniffing the Dodgers roster, even with Carlos Correa and Jock Peterson and Mitch Haniger. Their 3 big offseason signings on there. Carlos Rodon is still a free agent. If they brought him back, that would go a long way. But, I mean, you look at the depth chart here, and they have Logan Webb, they have Alex Wood, they have Alex Cobb, Jacob Junis, and Anthony Desclafani. Those are their 5 starters currently under contract. They've got Doval, who's good, a couple good bullpen arms, which is fine. They still don't have a catcher. Their first baseman is going to be some combo of J.D. Davis, Lamont Wade, Wilmer Flores, Tyro Estrada, Tommy LaStella at second base. Obviously, you know, some of these same David VR at third base. You got Brandon Crawford somewhere in the mix. You got Correa. You've got Jock. You've got Haniger. You've got Yastrzemski. I mean, it's just, I'm just saying, like, before you freak out because they went and signed Carlos Correa, that this roster is not very good.
Yeah, they're for me, like, it's great. Like, I'm happy. Like, I'm a fan of baseball. I'm a fan of teams.
I thought you were about to say you were happy for the Giants or you're happy for Carlos Correa, because neither of those things is allowed on this show.
Sure, I'm happy for Giants fans. You get premier talent. That's great. Spread it out. I like parity in MLB, but the core of the issue with me and the Giants doing this is that I don't their window for their prospects right now isn't there. It doesn't align up. So dumping, this is like you said, this is a longer play. So you're looking for this, 4 or 5 years, depending on when Farhan can turn it around up there. Just their core right now at the MLB level in the top end, like AAA and high AA, isn't there at the moment. They're not. They don't have these guys ready to step in. So it's a longer play. So it'd be about 4 or 5 years. I would say 4 years. And that's where they're at. So it's not in the immediate. They're still not. These moves weren't moves to elevate them, way past anyone. This was to try to keep up in the now. But their top end young players aren't ready to go yet.
Yeah, and I mean, look, with the new MLB playoff setup, like, the Giants could aspire to finish third in the division behind the Dodgers and Padres, sneak into the playoffs, and do basically exactly what the Phillies just did. But I do agree with you. They don't have the prospects that are due up in 2023. Now, maybe it's 24, maybe it's 25. I don't know that much. But it does feel like you're hoping that Correa's prime is for the next 4 to 6 years, and that maybe the last 3 to 4 of that prime are when you can kind of, all the stars can align. You've got young guys coming up on affordable contracts. Obviously, Logan Webb's a really good pitcher, and see how things line up. Because, again, that's not a small market team.
No.
So they will have some money to spend. Well, that'll do it for us today. Carlos Correa, did the Dodgers make a mistake? Let us know in the comments below. Would you have been happy if they had given out the exact contract that the Giants did? Again, share your thoughts below. That's Scott Geirman. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Make sure you check out DodgerBlue.com. You can see all sorts of great writing from folks like Scott and others. Make sure you subscribe here, ring the notification bell. Check us out on Blue Wire Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Search DodgerHeads. Rate, review, comment, like, all those things is greatly appreciated. Goes a long way towards helping us out. So enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, go Dodgers.